On this episode of the Dudes and Dads podcast, we talk with our friend Sean McCrindle about kids facing significant challenge.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMott and Andy Lehman.
Andy.
Joel.
Dude, I had a fantastic Sunday.
I'm glad to hear.
Fantastic Sunday. For those of you that don't know, we record on Sundays. You'll hear this on a Tuesday, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter
It's
because
a Sunday now.
It's a Sunday now, and I need to share a few joy points with you.
Sure.
Let's start off with first. Had a great day. Great day at church today with my friends over at Restore Church. Community Church was great. It was fantastic.
All right.
Number two, I went sledding.
That's always a fun time.
Yeah,
sledding.
I went sledding.
Did you stay warm when you?
I did.
When you were sledding,
guys. We'll have to put a picture. We'll put a picture up on the socials later of what I did to protect myself from the elements. We got a balmy high of 14 degrees out here today, so you did want to bundle up.
Right.
I did the full rabbit hair Mad Bomber hat.
Okay.
Which makes me look it's a little Cousin Eddie like out there, and then my hunting bibs and coat. I was in full camo out there sledding, as also provides a little bit of extra padding when you wipe out.
But the problem was it snow camo or was it like tree camo?
No, it was tree camo. So my camo did the opposite effect.
It made you very visible.
I am the most visible out on the snow.
All right.
Yeah, I look like a just so that was fun. Did some sledding, and then to really cap off just before heading over to the studio here. To cap off my day, the Lions won yet another playoff game, and we're excited about that. All my Lions fans,
congratulations!
Hey, those down in the 313, congratulations. Bob Seger was at this game.
Really?
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Who knew?
Who knew?
I didn't know he was a Lions fan.
He's a Detroit guy. It's all the Detroit greats were there. Jeff Daniels too.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
All the classics. So anyway, I'm in an especially good mood. Today was just filled full of all kinds of goodness, and got a Costco run into today as well.
Well, bless you.
And everyone knows that ate lunch at Costco. Costco pizza, guys, come on! To feed a family, I got a Costco pizza for under $10. Come on.
You can't beat that.
You cannot beat that. So really, in totality, I mean, when you're adding all those things up, that's a recipe for a fantastic day. So how are things with you, my friend?
Pretty good. Before we came over, I was watching the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. Since my Eagles are out. I mean,
fly Eagles.
Fly, not fly today.
Not flying. More dying than flying. Sorry.
But that being said, I was watching the Chiefs game since my family is a Chiefs fan.
Yeah, you're one of those guys like me. Like, I'm a Detroit Tigers fan when baseball season comes around. The rest of my family are a bunch of traitors and follow the Guardians. Do you feel similar? Do you feel like the odd man out amongst your family?
I mean, yes, because they all hate. They're like, they're a terrible team. They're terrible people. And
yeah. They even like throw out like the morality of the team as well.
Yes, that's what they have done.
And that's deep. That's deep.
Yeah, it hurts. It hurts right here. No. Well, guys, we have an awesome show today with our friend Sean here. But first, I want to remind you that this show is supported by listeners like you. We could not do this show without the financial gifts that you guys give to us. It keeps us going, keeps the lights on, keeps the heat on in this cold day.
Yeah.
But also for all of the technology that we have to feed.
All the stuff, the things that we do to make this show happen are supported by listeners like you.
And if you want to join, you can go to dudesanddadspodcast.com/support, where you'll find all of the support options available.
Yeah, that's great. Dudes and dads, thank you, supporters. Do we actually have an official name? We never do. Some podcast
duties. No, that sounds terrible. Let's not do that. No, we're not calling you duties.
I've got a comedian I follow, Dustin Nickerson.
Oh, yes.
He does the podcast Don't Make Me Come Back There, which the logo is he and his kids, and then it's like he and his wife in the front seat and his kids riding in the back, and it's like Don't Make Me Come Back There. And then they call their fans, their supporters, I think backseaters. I think that's what they call them. Yeah.
Nice.
So like backseat drivers or whatever.
Right.
Anyway.
I got you.
Okay. So we'll have to work on that. If anybody out there has a recommendation for what we should call the community that supports us, and it has to be nice.
It has to be and clean, family clean.
And better than duties.
Because that's not a good one.
We'd love to hear your recommendations. Well, hey, yes, thanks everyone. We're super excited this evening to have our friend Sean McCrindle on the show. Sean serves as the president and CEO.
Yes,
president and CEO.
Oh man,
I didn't get double titles with my job. I feel like I missed something there. But yeah, Sean serves as the president and CEO of Bashor Children's Home, located here in beautiful Goshen, Indiana. And he's a friend of mine. He's a colleague. Sean and I were fortunate enough we get to spend a fair amount of time together. Actually, we sit on a round table every month together. We talk about CEO-y things.
Right.
Which I should say we have a lot of, it's not just like business, it's a lot of personal, right. We share life together, and I've gotten to know Sean in that way, and it's been really, really good. So I've just been, over this last year, felt really fortunate to spend that time. So Sean, thanks for joining us this evening.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So Sean, we when thinking about we talk a lot about, obviously this is the dude, Andy and I being dudes and dads and having kids, and you yourself as a dude and a dad. We always like to start the show off by asking about the dad stats. So tell us about your family, your kids, where you grew up, where you went to school, all the stuff that you want to share with the internet about you and your family.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear it.
Well, it's, my family is amazing. I'm biased. Probably most of you guys are too, but it starts off with my wife, Shelly. She and I had met up in college. We actually both went to Goshen High School, but didn't really know each other, and met through mutual friends. And, I kept trying to set her up with my friends because I thought she was an amazing person.
Sure.
And then one day I realized, why am I trying to set this woman up with anybody but me?
That's right.
So,
that's right.
A mere 7.5 years later, I wore her down, and we got engaged and got married, and this year will be 25 years,
nice.
Which is awesome.
Nice.
And we have 2 kids, both in college at Purdue right now. Liam, who's a senior at college, and Kara, who is a sophomore, and both of them are.
What are your kids studying down there at Purdue?
He's graduating with mechanical engineering, and she's studying biomedical engineering.
Yeah, so I'm glad to know they'll be able to support you guys in your old age. That's really
all I know is thank goodness for my wife's genetics. Because I know that didn't come from this guy.
They were just like, Dad, we've seen what social work has done to you, and we're just
right.
we're heading in a different direction.
It's interesting because fair amounts of times throughout our lives, Shelly and I have looked at each other and said, I don't know what couple got our kids, but they've got to be going, what went wrong? We're such great, smart people, So, yeah, no, they're a great family. Our kids are just amazing, I think, well, everybody's always biased about their kids, but really, I can say there's lots of points in my life where both of my kids have taught me huge life lessons at critical times, and still to this day. I mean, we just, when they were home for the Christmas break, we got to do a week's vacation together, climbing around rocks and kayaking and stuff, and just a great time. And when you have kids that you can actually go like, I like being around them.
Exactly.
It's pretty cool.
Exactly right. Andy and I talk a lot about, in kind of any of our parenting journey, that really what we are is we're raising adults that we want to hang out with, right? Mm-hmm. When they get older. And I think that's when I see families that are older that have kids about your age, and it's like, they just can't wait to spend time together, and they look forward to that, and it's life-giving. Yep. Like that is I think it's just the sweetest thing. I think it's a win, and chalk it up to a victory in the old parenting category where you're like, I raised adults that I want to spend time with. I want to be around. And they don't drive me up the wall. So that's good on you. So Sean, you have now obviously been in the area that we live in here in Goshen and Elkhart County for a time. You've worked for Bashor Children's Home for a total of 28 years.
Yep.
Been the CEO for how many years now are you?
2.5.
Yeah,
or so.
2.5.
Yeah.
And so prior to that, what sort of roles did you? I'm guessing Sean's a real. He likes to climb the ladder. It was probably a clear.
It was a set out plan from the beginning.
I'm sure. But what is kind of what roles and sort of things have you done while serving at Bashor Children's
so
Home?
It's interesting because when I had graduated from my undergraduate, I was initially planning on going right on to graduate school, but through an internship realized I was going down the road of being a psychologist, realized that wasn't really the thing for me. So I thought I needed to pause a little bit. So I came back home to this area and, applied at Bashor. I told the guy that was interviewing me that I'd be there about exactly 1 year. I was going to be moving away. And he laughed at me there and at all 3 of his retirement parties, which he finally fully retired after 50 years. And so I started as a second shift direct care staff in one of the residential programs with younger guys. And it just got into me, I realized that there's a lot going on with these young guys and most of the kids that I've worked with. But at heart, we're just really not all that different. The thing that happens with kids who've had a lot of crazy things happen in life is at some point it becomes really risky for them to believe in their future and have hope for their future.
Yeah.
And so acting like a fool's easier than acting like somebody who might believe in yourself or believe that you can have a chance in life.
Yeah.
And so they choose that path until they have an opportunity to see another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're going to the residential situation, I think, obviously there's the challenges there that you mentioned. What sort of, if you're thinking about like skill sets that you needed to succeed, because obviously you didn't leave Bashor, you stayed there, you stuck with it.
Yeah.
Thinking about skill sets and abilities to succeed in that environment, what would you name? What would you say was essential for that? Yeah.
So I think really when it comes down to it, when you're starting any of this stuff, if you're going to be working with kids, you got to know where your values lie, and you got to be strong in those. But you also have to be able to be a person who can ask more questions than make statements. I think if you're going to get somewhere with kids, even your own kids, you get a lot farther if you're willing to ask them questions about things rather than tell them about things a lot.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's one of the things I think kids have taught me over the years. But I think knowing where my beliefs lie, where my values lie, was important for 2 reasons. One was because a lot of times, even kids with a lot of trouble, their values and beliefs matched up with mine a lot more than I would have thought.
Interesting.
And then the second thing is sometimes my values and beliefs, if I wasn't aware of how those came into play with kids, could cause problems and friction between us. Because say one of my values is you treat women right. Well, sometimes our kids don't do that very well.
Yeah.
And I would jump in too harshly early on. And I had a great female coworker who said, "Hey, maybe let me fight my own battles."
Oh yeah.
And it was a great lesson for me because one, she needed to gain that credibility, but the other thing was I wasn't going to change that kid's feeling by jumping in there. And so I think that, and then I actually think a fair level of ignorance is key at the beginning of it. Not knowing that you're going to go through a lot of roller coasters, both emotionally and in other ways, and just not knowing how tough it's going to be to get close to kids that you see horrible things sometimes happen to.
Yeah.
That ignorance can be really a blessing at times.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the kids that you guys serve at Bashor, and I guess let me first ask this. Kind of paint a picture for us for the types of services that Bashor offer, because they are varied and at various levels.
Well, and you had mentioned children's home, but what else do you guys do? Because you guys it's a varied thing.
Yeah. And so I want to encapsulate it, because if I went into that stuff, we could be here for hours and hours. I mean, so quite frankly, Bashor serves over 1,000 kids a year.
Yeah.
And our residential side is the most intensive, but it's actually the fewest number of kids.
Okay.
And so, I think if you think of like a hospital, Bashor, the residential side would be that intensive emergency room and critical care unit. A lot of intensive work, that sort of thing. But then we have services where we help kids who are in our community schools and struggling there, not making it there, who the schools can refer to our alternative school. They come in for the day. They're actually going back home at night.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to keep them connected to their school and get them back into their school. We also have a very small foster care program, basically just for our kids who come out of residential. And we have our community-based services, which has a huge array. I mean, this is everything from one-time classes to outpatient therapy. We have programs to keep kids from getting into the system, like stop skipping, which is for kids who are having trouble missing school, stop lifting for kids who shoplift too much or are shoplifting. And then we have a teen court program, which is all run by teens, everything from the prosecuting attorney all the way through. Huge success rate there. And then one of the other things that we have that I think is really good in our community-based services is for every family who is going through divorce in Elkhart County and has kids under the age of 18, they go through our transparenting and seasons class.
Wow.
And the whole goal of that thing is whatever's going on, you both care about your kids. Let's help you focus on them. It's huge.
I wish more people knew about that service right there. Like, I think because that hits so many families in a very significant way.
Can I tell you a quick story about it that I think? So years ago when we were first starting this, I got to run some of those classes. And one of the things I would do is while the parents are in the transparenting class, their kids are in seasons. So, we'd have some of the kids who were younger. And a lot of times what we'd do is that was big for them because they got to realize I'm not the only kid going through this. That's pretty big. But I would always have the people who were working with the young kids take them out while I'm doing some classes with the parents, have their kids do sidewalk chalk art.
Mm-hmm.
And they would tell them, don't put any names down, just draw how it is for you right now with your family. And then they would come in and I would tell the parents, hey, we're going to go on break. We're going to go out and walk down the sidewalk. Every parent knows their kid's drawing.
Wow. Yeah.
And so there were parents in there who were terrified that they were doing horrible by their kids, who would see pictures that their kids drew that actually were pretty normal.
Mm-hmm.
Families holding hands, things like that, and they would break down and cry.
Yeah.
Because for them, it let them know for the first time, I'm not doing as bad as I thought.
Sure.
Then there are other parents who were so much in their own hurt that they didn't realize what they were doing to their kids, and they'd walk out and they see their kids with a heart that's being pulled apart, and they would break down.
Yeah.
And those families would come in and be like, we need more help.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, to me, I look at that and I say, that's a very critical time for families and for kids. And if we can do things the right way, the direction those kids go from there can be hugely impacted, but also just their connection to their family again can really be drawn together.
Yep. So you've talked about the residential, and that's kind of a smaller group, and they're on the Bashor campus. You have houses that are individual houses that are dedicated to that service, right?
Yeah. So like we have emergency shelter care, which is really designed for kids who are in transition, but also if there are kids who've been kicked out of their house or they've run away from home, they can check in and there's no cost for that. We just have to work with their parents to make sure that they're okay with them staying for a while and working with us. And that's been a really good thing. And then we have a bunch of other residential programs, everything from substance abuse treatment to significant traumatic kids who are dealing with traumatic issues, things that have happened and behaviors that result. And then our newest residential program is for girls who have survived human trafficking.
And in that one, I think so maybe you can help me understand this, and I think I sort of understand. But when I drove by your guys' facility shortly after that that place was built out. There's a stark appearance to it in comparison to the rest of the rest of the facilities that you have. Kind of describe it to us, and then why kind of the why behind it.
So, excuse me. I think the thing that's always the hardest to understand, because our brains can't really comprehend it, and mine couldn't even after doing this work at the beginning. But the girls who have been subjected to that, you would think that once somebody saves them, that they would be like, thank you so much. I'm so excited about this help. And actually, they have gone under such systematic brainwashing. I mean, we don't even have a good concept of the level of brainwashing that happens with these girls, that their first thing is, I don't trust anybody. I definitely don't trust you. I have to get away from this place and many times get back to my abuser or my pimp or whatever, which makes no sense. But if you understand the levels of psychological abuse and trauma that these girls go through, it does. So our facility is set up to be a secure facility. So that means the girls aren't locked in their rooms or anything like that. It means that they can't freely run outside into the community, because if they did, their skill set would make them gone. And then, once they're gone, they're at real risk for never coming back, or somebody finding them and them no longer being alive. And so we built this it's a beautiful facility, really. And, the girls helped design a lot of things. And in fact, one of the girls who's we call her our most notorious, but she also is one of our most beloved girls, who's been gone for several years. We actually contracted her to help us look at some of this stuff, because she was so effective at hurting herself and doing things. And she was extremely helpful in that. But then we also have outside courtyards and all that with really high fences that are anti-climb fences, and they actually look really nice to look through. But then on the side, it's amazing how things are so well designed. On the side to our parking lot, the wall that is there, you could literally drive a semi into and you would not break through it.
Wow.
And it's because those girls got to know that nobody can bust in and steal them.
That's interesting, because I think that's one of those things that you think of happens elsewhere. Happens in, third world countries. It happens, in
or even larger urban centers,
in Miami, right? But not in Goshen, Indiana, or this area. And that's sad. And thank you for doing the work that you're doing.
I'll say this, just to be honest, we didn't think it was that bad. And it wasn't until we were getting more and more kids in our shelter who were couch surfing, and kids run out of places to couch surf. Then they run into places where people expect things of them, and then they run into danger. And as these kids told these stories, we realized, okay, there's more than we even realize is going on, both within our community and then traveling through our community and within the state. And so we really tried to work with other facilities to help get these girls the help they needed. But both our kids and those places said, you guys know as much as we do. You need to jump in the game and do this.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that's what we do.
Yeah. So, so we've, the trafficking side, the residential side, the education side. So you're running an alternative school within on your campus as well. Grades ranging from
kindergarten all the way through.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was interesting because we used to go fourth grade through, and then as the schools kept asking us, how about third, how about second? When they got to kindergarten, we were like, seriously, you need us for kindergarten? And they were like, they were in a position of deciding whether they were going to expel kindergartners or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we were like, really? And then those kids promptly showed up at our place, bid our teachers, just like, they were doing. We were going, okay, we understand now. There's a lot of difficulties schools deal with, but it's nice that it's good to be able to be there. And our community schools try really hard with these kids. And that partnership has been good because they really see the importance of us doing things, but also the importance of them being able to get those kids back into their schools.
So I wonder if obviously the stories are unique to each kid and kind of where they come from. If you were able to kind of paint with broader brushstrokes, like the circumstances that are that you guys identify that are contributing to the students that are finding their way? I guess we can even start with just the alternative school, like the students that are finding their way into your services. What challenges are they facing, or what atmospheres are they in that maybe that might probably overlap with kids that are kids that are also staying in the schools?
Yeah.
It's clearly they have responded to something differently, though. That something different has happened in their life. What are sort of the things that contribute to that?
Yeah. And I can say this: there's kids from varying backgrounds. Like, we always tend to think it's kids from certain backgrounds that run into these challenges, but sometimes you have kids who have very loving families who care about them a lot, but there's been some trauma that's happened or some things that have been really difficult. And so as the kids' behaviors become more and more problematic, there are times where the family just realizes, okay, if I don't do something different with my kid, my kid's going to end up getting expelled from school. And so we have kids that come in where their parents are working with the school on that. And we have kids who come in whose families are kind of chronically homeless. And so they aren't in a particular school system for very long periods of time, and they bounce and bounce. And once you get really behind as a kid, if you have two choices in class, to look stupid or be a problem, it's easier to be a problem in front of everybody than look stupid. And so our kids will act that out. And some of our kids, really come from a lot of substance abuse within their family. And, that's hard. Especially with, a lot of the stuff that's out there now. It puts kids in bad positions. It puts them in positions of basically being in control of their own lives at really early ages. And we all know that doesn't work out real well, but also puts them in situations where they're around some particularly dangerous people sometimes. And so those kids both like going to school because it's one safe, stable place, but then they have real trouble at school because they're used to doing whatever they want everywhere else. And so that's I think a lot of what we see are, families who've had some difficulties, have kind of that chronic homelessness side of things, a lot of substance abuse issues. And then we do see a lot of families, a lot of boys struggle with a complete father absence or positive male role model. Has huge impacts on those kids. They don't realize it, but you can see it.
Yeah, I think this has been I think this is a conversation, and it comes up a lot on our show. And it's definitely close to the work that you guys do. Really addressing fatherlessness. Really talking about the impact that it can make. I say this with all respect to the families that that are running and trying to operate without a dad, but there's just no. I felt like culture for a long time, was trying to say like, well, like the single mom, like she can get by, right? She had enough resources, enough support, whatever. And for all the amazing women, and there's story after story after story, who, man, just they went and got the second, the third job, worked all kinds of hours and shifts. It made a way for their family to survive, and that's really what it was. Just had a mindset of like, we will make it through this. And just set themselves to that. Like, my goodness, how amazing. We can say that, and at the same time say that nothing replaces having a father in the home, and that's for our young men, and that's for our young women.
Well, and not only that, but I think that when you have a son, especially, that doesn't have a dad, not only is he not getting that example, but then he also has to be that man of the house. Right. And that's not something that any kid should have to take on.
Such a lot of, I mean, I can only imagine just the amount in so many cases with some of the kids that are coming to you guys, just the level of stress, just chronic stress that they are carrying with them. Feelings of like having to take on responsibility before they should really have to take on that responsibility. Wondering how are my parents doing? How are I mean, they might be the ones that are the adult in the room, kind of thing. How So, I mean, you guys are providing, and obviously, you guys are providing in the services that you do. There's a lot of psychological care, I would imagine, in all of this. What is a young person who's coming to you? What is your goal? Like, what do you feel like they need to know and experience and understand to move forward in life?
Yeah. Well, one of the great things is a part of our agency, we've always had, strong Christian spiritual background.
Yeah.
And the great thing is our people know, try to shove anything down any of our kids' throats, it's a bad idea, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, we're always trying to offer as many things as we can and not have it be like we're trying to make you do this stuff. And I'll tell you this, people would think, and it does happen at the beginning, but our kids are not as resistant to that stuff as people would think. In fact, most of our kids are interested. Mm-hmm. We have kids who go to area churches, who are involved in area youth groups. We have a chaplain on campus. And actually, one of my favorite statistics, the only 100% statistic that Bashor has, I love this one. Every kid who has tried to punch our chaplain has gotten baptized. Now, we've had other kids who've gotten baptized too, but everyone. So my question for our chaplain who most recently came in was, I told him that, I said, you willing to take one for the team?
Yeah.
He's like, I'll take two if it gets a kid baptized. So he was in.
Absolutely.
That's a good stat.
Love it.
Yeah. You should be maybe got to be more concerned about a kid if they haven't taken a swing.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, are you okay? Is this?
Well, they don't. They, the good thing is, I always say that's not a kid who's apathetic. He's at least mad enough.
That's right.
And I do think so. For me, kids choose to put in prayer requests, and it's amazing to me. We have something like 1,400 people who are on our prayer request chain who our kids and staff put out prayers. They pray for them. But like in my role now, I watch those very closely, and I can tell you when something changes for a kid because it'll look a lot like this. And I remember this one girl had this very specific one several years ago. 16 straight weeks of get me out of Bashor. That was the prayer. Week 17 was please pray. My prayer is that the man who killed my mom knows he's forgiven and that I can realize that I'm forgiven too.
Wow.
So that was week 17. Yeah. So I got to tell her staff, I said, hey, she's going to be doing better here soon. And they're like, yeah, right. Because this is the kid who flipped every furniture. She was like superhuman. Yeah. A couple weeks later, I had a couple staff show up at my door and they were like, how'd you know? And I was like, well, I'm just that good. And then I told them, I'm like, well, no, I was reading her prayer request.
You had an inside mind.
But you could see it. That's so how do I know? Yeah, I like the kids start to feel hope for their future and belief in things. But I know that that's also tied to grace, knowing that them having grace for people, having grace for themselves, and then also being able to kind of see that side of things where you're grateful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I had one of the kids tell me one time when I said to him, why are you still making it years after? He said, you just statistically shouldn't be making it. And he said, I got so much more to lose now.
Wow.
He's like, I just don't want to pay the cost anymore. And I was like, that's a grateful person.
The 100%. Living with gratitude is a powerful thing. Yeah. And you say 16 weeks of prayer. Okay, that's a few months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? That's 4
a
4
long
months.
time. Yeah.
How many of us as adults, when we look at a problem and a troubled kid or a kid who's going through something, are willing to say, hey, I'll go through hell with this kid for 4 months if it means, I just think like, that's why I appreciate what you guys do is that it's not a sprint, it is a marathon. With so many of the kids, but you guys are in a position and you have an intentionality to take that journey with them. And I know, like, not every story ends as happily as you guys would want to. And I'm sure there's lots of stories that actually in the long term maybe did, and you just don't know.
Right.
But you're committed to planting the seeds of hope for a better future. And it's a win every time. I mean, it's a win every time we do it.
Right.
So as you've done this, as you've just climbed the ladder at Bashor, and if you did direct casework, and then you like how many different roles have you held?
I think I've never really counted them, but it's got to be over 10.
Yeah.
and here's what I found out was like looking backwards, I never realized it wasn't that I was so good at anything. It was just I was really interested in everything.
Yeah.
So it was like, hey, we're going to start this really hard new program that's like, I don't know if it'll work out. And I'm like, yeah, can I do that?
Yeah.
And what I realized in that was that the good thing is God already had the plan.
Mm-hmm.
He just needed, again, back to ignorance, somebody ignorant enough to realize they didn't have the skills, but were fortunate enough to be backed by somebody who did,
That's good.
And so I've gotten to be involved. Now, the one thing I've never gotten to do as a job, and I'm not even allowed to play with, is anything in our maintenance or engineering. So I get to look at this stuff. I just don't get to touch anything.
Nice.
In it,
I don't know if I've ever seen Sean mow the lawn out there.
No.
I don't know. Okay.
No, they let me wash the mower sometimes.
Oh, nice.
So,
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Sean, as you've done this work, as you've had, you've seen the importance of the work, you've seen the dynamics of the work of working with kids that are coming from challenging situations. I'd be interested to know how it impacted your own fathering journey. What it meant, how it impacted the way you talk to your kids about things, the way you parented, your kind of. We always talk about a parenting philosophy. I'm not sure I have a fully baked one yet, but we're trying to get in that direction, right? Like a framework that we're operating from. I'd be interested in what that was for you.
Well, at some point, my parenting philosophy at its base level was this: try not to set the kids on fire.
Yeah.
Have as much fun as you can without setting your kids on fire by accident,
That's good.
Well, I'll say, I was really taught so much by the kids. I was 21 when I started. Shelly and I got married 2 years later. It was 2 years after that we had our first son, or our first child, Liam. And so there was a couple of things. In fact, Shelly told me this at one point early on, because, she's just an awesome everything, but she's an awesome mom and she's adventurous and all that. But as a first mom, it's a first parent anyway, but especially as a first mom, I think you worry, we're doing everything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing everything wrong. And one day, I guess I didn't really even think about it, but I said to her, look, you know what I do? As long as our kids know without a doubt that we love them and that we believe in them, we're going to have to try really, really hard to screw them up.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that. You think about it, you can be too hard on your kid or too soft on your kid. But if your kid knows, not fake, but knows that you believe in them and that you love them, even if you're too harsh on things sometimes, they're going to understand that. And in fact, that was probably one of the other things I learned in working with our kids at Bashor was, I had to truly believe in them. I had to really be interested in relationship with them, truly had to love those kids. But if I had to fall on one side or the other, my side was always more stern or strong, not stern in a mean way, but strong. And it would immediately be followed up with something that would make that kid know that I was being that way because I believed that they had something in them that was really good and I wasn't going to accept something less than that.
Yeah.
And so that really fed into my kids. I mean, I think my kids made my life too easy. Shelly and my life too easy. In fact, there are times where shouldn't we be having a little more problems? And I think there's lots of things that go into that. Large family who's wonderful and supportive. And so it's far beyond us, but definitely the other thing the kids taught me early on, quick story to show just how stupid I was at the very beginning, but how God gave me a great lesson in that is we had this policy that came out 3-4 weeks after I was hired that said, if a kid throws a chemical, you have to physically intervene with them right away. Makes sense, right?
Sure.
Now we don't give kids chemicals anymore to do, but that was back then. So just me and one kid are in the cottage, and the kid chucks this bottle of chemicals, and I'm in my head going, this seems weird, but so I take the kid down in a physical intervention, and we get to the ground, and the kid goes, "Why'd you do that?" And I said, "I don't know." And so I said, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Can we sit up?" And he's like, "Yeah." So he sat up, and so I kind of explained to him.
Yeah.
I said, "But now I'm realizing I'm pretty sure that only meant if there's other kids in the area." And he started laughing, and I said, "I'm really sorry." And he started tearing up.
Oh.
And I was like, "Whoa." I'm like, "Oh no, maybe I did hurt him." I'm like, "You okay?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "What happened?" He goes, "Nobody's ever said that to me before."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was the God thing. And it was like my own human stupidity does this thing.
Yeah.
But then God's like, I'm going to make something out of it.
Right.
Realizing that kid should have been told he was sorry by so many people.
Yeah.
And the craziest thing is a couple months later, to one of the female staff who's really hard on female staff, I heard him say, "I'm sorry." And it changed her world too, because she never thought that would happen.
Yeah.
And so I think in that is saying you're sorry to your kids isn't weakness.
No.
It is the only real strength.
Beautiful.
And kids are incredibly forgiving. This kid who had this horrible life immediately forgave me for physically intervening for absolutely no reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
He had no reason, and who am I to him? And he forgave me immediately. My own kids who love me to death, me being able to say I'm sorry and truly be sorry for something is not going to do anything but make their lives better and mine too.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of at the top of the show that you initially when you got out of college, you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna go get my master's right away," and then you're like, "No, maybe not." And so went to Bashor, did that work. How long between undergraduate and graduate work for you?
Let's see, probably would have been 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like that was the right move? Like that was
for
the
me,
best?
it was. Yeah.
We talk a lot on this show frequently about we've had like gap year discussions. We've had kind of I think helpful because we've got lots of families that are listening and they're asking the question about how they should be encouraging their kids one way or the other in education and things like this. I know in my from between undergrad and graduate work for me was not, I just was a year in between, but I was an older, I was a super senior by the time I graduated and was a little bit, and was married and, and those sort of things. Yeah. But I think now so oftentimes, like the value and I'd be interested in even when you're looking at, when you're hiring people and talking about staff, the value of getting some real world on the ground experience. There is such there can be such a rush through the educational process. And I know in my time in graduate school, the students that annoyed me the absolute most, that really got under my skin, and I was just like, you're just not, they were not able to connect with the the graduate educational part the same way, because they had not gone and been a practitioner, like they had not actually been a practitioner for a time. They had not gotten hit in the face by a kid, or an elder, or whoever, they had not had to have that kind of, rubber meets the road experience a little bit to help gauge their, to give some parameters and some direction for their future. I mean, are you there? Do you think like, hey, space it out, get some real world experience. It's valuable.
Well, here's what I would say. And I guess this comes from my own experience with my own kids. So, both my kids being at Purdue for engineering, that's a bragging thing or whatever. It's hard to get into that, right?
Yep.
I told both of them, if you get into this and it's not for you, change your major.
Yeah. Yep.
Because the worst thing you could do is be in something that's super successful and you're really good at it and you do all this and it pays you too well that you can't really move into something else and you hate it.
Yeah.
And so, And I truly meant that. And that came from my thing. I was going to become a psychologist because that was kind of the highest paying in this helping profession. I realized I wasn't like, they're in like wonderful. Psychologists are very, very important. I'm just not that guy. You know, I gotta have more different interaction, less testing interaction. And so what I'd say is when you're looking at your kids, step back and assess honestly. If your kids are in high school and they're being really successful, they don't need you to drive them anymore. Like they just don't.
Yep.
You've already done your work, you know? And in fact, probably at that time, the best thing you can do is switch gears and be like, you don't have to take yourself so seriously.
Yeah.
You're already going to be successful.
Yep.
Because we all remember back to high school age, and if you went to college, early college, that whole being terrified of, am I going to be good enough? Let's face it, you're not going to go anywhere where you're the smartest person ever.
Yep.
I mean, somebody will, but it ain't going to be me.
Me either.
So I can let go of that.
Yep.
I'm also not a failure.
Yep.
You know, and you probably don't have kids who are a failure. And that's where I think switching, especially, you know, from junior high to high school age, switching from a parent who makes a lot of statements to being a parent who asks a lot of questions becomes really critical.
Yep.
Because your questions will bore out your kids' beliefs and their deep values. And that you've already cemented those in your kids. And over the long haul, most kids, even if they're kind of going out of bounds a little bit, if they've had the right kind of moral upbringing and all that stuff, good family, outside of drugs are the wild card, man. But outside of that, most of them, even if they bounce around, by mid to late 20s, they'll be coming right back into line with things. And so I think we put that pressure on ourselves. And I would challenge us not to look at how other people's kids are doing.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's going to, I mean, that'll kill everything. That comparison kills you every time.
Yeah. And I hope for listeners out there, I mean, I really hope you hear this from Sean as someone who's interacting with a lot of kids and has seen. In 28 years, I just can't imagine you've probably forgotten more things that you've seen than anything. But like, I think to sort of boil it down to say, you know, the takeaways from your work and what you've seen, I really hope everyone hears, like, it really isn't rocket science in as much as like we just often think, and I'm there too. I've got to, like, it's a voice that's in the back of my head of like, hey, I need to keep the accelerator down with my kid. I need to keep, you know, to keep on making sure that they're doing their best all the time. Yeah. And but I mean, and this is what we also know. It's what we know about adolescent psychology. It's what we know about, you know, brain development, moral formation, all that sort of stuff. The key building blocks, more than likely, through adolescence are there. As long as they don't get mixed up in substance abuse, which, like you said, that's a major wild card. As long as they don't, and they have a parent that really, what you've really said, it becomes more of a mentor and coach to them, and less of a guiding each one of their steps and kind of giving all of this. You're setting up them, by and large, setting them up for success, and that way we can just, as parents, take a little bit of a breather. So
absolutely.
Well, man, Sean, wow, really helpful, interesting perspectives on things. I think a lot of good experience. But we can never end a show without putting you through the final ringer. And so now it is time for...
Now it's time for Dudes and Dads Pop Quiz.
Thank you, Aaron James. Appreciate it. This is where we ask you random questions. You can't prepare for them in any way, shape, or form. And
you can't prepare for the answers
that
either.
Also,
man.
This is good. That's what makes this podcast magic.
Yes.
Andy, you tell me when you're ready with your questions, and I'm going to fire mine off.
All right. What's your greatest regret?
Oh,
I went with the regret one.
Nice one.
My greatest regret would be, man, I don't have very many of those.
That's good.
Okay, so Yeah, my greatest regret would be that I couldn't trick Shelly into marrying me at 5 years instead of 7.
Wow. I feel like the way he answered that is like it's a win.
Right.
Yeah, I won no matter what.
That's
Right.
beautiful. That's beautiful. Sean, if you were, if you had a time machine and you wanted to relive 3 significant events within your lifetime, what would those 3 things be?
I would, and I'm going to pair these together. I would relive both of my kids being born because I've never had a body, mental,
It's the realest
reaction
thing
like that in my life.
The realest thing. Yeah.
And then, so the second one would be reliving a week before my dad died. He was on a fishing trip with us, and my son Liam was on the boat. My dad could barely do anything by that point. And my dad catches about a 3.5 pound smallmouth bass and reels it in himself, which was like he could hardly hold a spoon. And we get it in and we're all just excited. And Liam turns to me, just tears flushing his face. And he said, I just prayed God let him have one more.
Oh, come on. Come on.
Yeah, like
Wow.
I could live that all day, every day.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
great.
And then the I think probably one of my greatest gift joys in my life is a mug my daughter Kara gave me. That basically the mug said, thanks for raising me to be a great man, even though I'm your daughter. And I was so excited about that because I've always said we don't have different rules for boys and girls in our house.
Yeah.
And she's a very strong woman.
Yeah.
But not mouthy strong.
Yeah.
She's just strong.
Yeah.
And so when she gave that to me, it was one of the best gifts of my life.
That's great.
All right. What is your favorite gadget?
My favorite gadget would be, I'm going to have to say, what is my favorite gadget? I'm thinking of all the things I play with. Okay, probably my favorite gadget is I have like a World War II trench lighter that somebody had built out of a cartridge in World War II. And it's taken me a lot to kind of get it running and going again. So I'd say it's probably my favorite gadget at this point.
That's good. Favorite book that you've read in the last 5 years?
My favorite, the favorite one I'd say would probably be Endurance. It's the story of Ernest Shackleton's ship. I don't know if you've heard the story, but they got 1800s, got stuck in pack ice, survived for 400 and some days in Antarctica. Amazing story. Great leadership story.
My last question, which living person do you admire the most?
It's a tie, and it's all within my family.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I admire both. I admire all 3, my daughter and my son and my wife.
Nice.
For different reasons. My son is probably the best representation of Jesus that I see. He's just crazy weird how good he is. You know what I mean? Like almost irritating. My daughter is always a surprise in the depth of her spirituality. And my wife is always an amazing representation of grace where it's not.
Yeah.
So I just go to dinner with my family, basically.
That's great.
Awesome.
That's great. Sean, what's the best thing you've eaten in the last year?
Well, that's easy for me to answer. So when the salmon are running into Bering Springs, my son and I always go out and fish. And so there's been times where we catch a salmon, fillet it up, butter it and salt it over a fire, and there's nothing better than that.
That's beautiful. That's
Love
beautiful.
it. Love it.
Sean, congratulations.
You passed.
You have passed.
Successfully passed.
Flying
Sweet.
colors. Flying colors. Oh, gosh. Sean, I just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for being on
Yeah,
here.
thanks for coming out,
guys.
We're just so fortunate to have people like you and the many great people that are at Bashor doing amazing things in our community. And so, as always, we will give you all the ways. Bashor's always looking for volunteers, people to invest in their ministry there and all of that. So we'll make sure over the show notes at Dudes and Dads Dudes and Dads podcast
You'll get it right one of these days.
We'll make sure to send the links over there so you can get to know more about them. Guys, we appreciate you. We're grateful for you. You can head over to dudesandadspodcast.com for all the show notes, past episodes, future episodes, present episodes. Dudes and Dads Podcast at gmail.com.
You can listen now to our future episodes.
You can.
Yeah.
We've got a time machine.
It's amazing.
Dudes and Dads Podcast at gmail.com if you want to send us an email. Ideas for future show ideas, all that good stuff.
All that great stuff.
All that great stuff. Anything else, Andy?
With grace
and peace. See ya.
Fabulous.